Hi, this is Dylan with Smartlaunch. Welcome to the Wi-Fi Captive Portal tutorial, new in Smartlaunch 4.8. Smartlaunch Captive Portal is a feature where Wi-Fi clients are forced to log in after connecting. So whenever they launch the internet or try to connect, then they will be brought to the login screen where they can actually log into their Smartlaunch account. And so the reason it's useful to you is that users of Wi-Fi devices, laptops, tablets, cell phones, they can log into their account through the Wi-Fi Captive Portal on their laptops. This new feature is quite advanced, and it is recommended you have basic networking knowledge. However, if you follow this tutorial exactly, then I don't think it'll be an issue for any of you. So to start, I want to bring up the network map, and let's see how this is all laid out. Okay, so you have to have two physical NIC cards. They cannot be emulated, they cannot be USB, they have to be physically inside your server. Right now it's a 64-bit processor that's required on your server, and this requirement will change in the future. But for now you have to have this. So you probably already have your main DSL cable router that's connected to the internet and other PC clients. So what you need for the captive portal is a separate WAP, a WAP, or a Wi-Fi access point. And the reason I call it that instead of a Wi-Fi router is because it doesn't actually route. So when you get this, you'll turn DHCP off. And it's not even connected to the internet. It is only connected to your Smartlaunch server. And so from here, other Wi-Fi clients will connect to it. So again, we have two physical NIC cards. One will go to the wireless access point, which will go to the Wi-Fi clients. And on the other side, the second physical NIC card, this is probably how you already set up. So you can just do this as normal. DHCP needs to be on. It probably is already on. More than likely, you don't even have to touch this side of the settings. Okay, so now you have an idea of the basic network layout when it comes to hardware. So when you buy your wireless access point and add it, it's very simple. You simply plug in an Ethernet cable to a WAN slot here in the picture into your server, into the second NIC card. Big mistake is to plug it into the WAN port. Again, it's not getting any internet, so do not plug it in here. And this is really all you need. It's a very basic setup. And then again, you have to disable DHCP. Many times it's on by default. So log into your router, and if you don't know how to do that, I'll post a link below the YouTube video on a tutorial for that. And you can see here that you just go to network setup, and wherever it says DHCP, you just want to turn it off or disable it. And after you've done that, be sure to change the IP address of the router. It's usually also a network setup. It's different for every router, but it's mostly in the very similar spot, very similar sounding name. So if we bring up our network map again, we want to use this IP address for the WAP, 192.168.0.2. And for advanced users, you can, of course, change any of these. There'll be options later to customize your network, but for the sake of this tutorial, we're going to stick with this network map. And while you're setting static IPs around, I want to emphasize that the WAP is on a completely different network from the other one. So you can see it's actually color-coded in blue and red for the separate networks. So for example, this is 192.168.0.2, and on your Windows machine, we just set the static IP to 192.168.0. Anything above 2, so maybe 3. And then on the other side, for Windows, 192.168.1. Anything, maybe 2. And then here on your DSL, maybe 192.168.1.1. And this is the most generic for most routers anyway, so there's a good chance that half the people watching this video actually have this address by default. Okay, the next thing I want to do is explore the network adapters, and this part is actually optional, but it makes life way easier later. So what I'm going to do is I'm not sure if you can see this part. I'm right-clicking my network adapter at the bottom right, the system tray. I'm going to open Network and Sharing Center, change adapter settings, and we have these two. And this is Wi-Fi. Pretend it says it's a physical card. I'm just doing this on my laptop. So what we want to do is find out which one is LAN and which one is WAN, meaning which one is connected to the wireless access point and which one's connected to the router. And if you don't know, the easiest way to find this out is to just pull out a plug and see what happens. So I'm going to find which one is my LAN device. So you can't see it right now, but I'm actually looking for the cord connected from my wireless access point to the computer, and I'm going to pull it out. And when I do, then suddenly you'll notice that there's an X for disconnected. It says a network cable is unplugged. This means for sure that this is the LAN side because it's connected to my wireless access point. LAN meaning no internet. I'm going to rename this by pressing F2 or right-click rename, LAN. And the other one, I'm going to rename WAN. And the point of doing that, you'll discover later. But for now, let's launch Smartlaunch server. Unlock. And if you're new to 4.8, you'll notice that we've rearranged the categories. So we go to Networking, Captive Portal. And you'll be greeted by a screen you're probably unfamiliar with because this is actually a plugin. If you look at the top, it says Plugin Disabled. And if you look at the stage, it says Beta. So in the future, we'll probably have a new video. Okay, so step number 1, download the plugin to continue. So by clicking the Download Captive Portal plugin, it'll download a zip file about 80 megabytes in size. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, and you can see I already downloaded it, so it says already downloaded, but for you, you would see a bar go up here until it's 100%, and then it would say download complete. And for number 2, let's look over here. VirtualBox is also required for this plugin, and this is due to low layer networks. And so if you just click the download VirtualBox free, it'll download the latest compatible version with the Captive Portal. And if you look at the gray text below, it says skip this step if already installed, no configuration required. So if you already have VirtualBox installed, and there's a good chance you may have, then that's okay. You can just skip this step. But if you do not have it, just click this button and it'll download it within Smartlaunch. After it's downloaded, it'll launch the setup for you to complete. So no configuration is required. You can just click next, next, next to finish, and that's okay. Unlock plugin. So from here, there's a satisfying looking plugin enabled. So here, it's just remembering some settings last time. I'm going to reset to default for this tutorial. And you can see here, we have the networks I showed you earlier with a map. So let me bring up the map side by side to sort of compare what's going on here. Okay, so we have the modem, 192.168.1.1, that's here. We have the WAP, 192.168.0.2, that's on the right side. Then, these two are special because they're created by Smartlaunch. So, this one is the most important, customize CP LAN. So CP LAN is actually here in the network map, 192.168.0.1. And it says this IP needs to be free because Smartlaunch will create this IP later. And for the WAN, this is what actually grants users internet after they log into the Captive Portal, which means the LAN that the Smartlaunch creates, this is used for the login screen. And you can see the WAN is currently set to DHCP by default. And this is getting the DHCP from your modem. So it'll probably end up with an IP 192.168.1. something. Okay. So for this tutorial, I'm actually going to customize my WAP because I'm on a special network. But the default is okay too, 0.2. So I'm going to change this to 3.2, which means later I need to change the CP LAN to 3.1. So these two have to be connected, and the top and bottom need to be connected. They need to be in the same subnet, and these need to be in the same subnet. Okay, so for now I'm just going to hit save and apply. And if you customize this, then this screen might come up saying LAN IP unknown because we haven't actually started the captive portal yet. So the default one is going to be different. So we can just cancel for now. Okay, network saved. Let's move on to requirements. Okay, from here, almost everything is disabled. So the first thing we need to do is check to view and confirm network layout to continue. And so pressing this will be the network layout I actually showed you earlier. And so this is accessible to any of you guys at any time. And when you're satisfied, you can just click done or close the window. Okay, now everything's unlocked. And so before I hit check requirements, let's go through and actually see what all of these requirements do. So we have a checklist here, 0 through 5. 0 is a prerequisite. Verify plugin files. And so, like the tooltip says, it ensures the zip file is not corrupt. We have install VirtualBox. You might have already done this before, but if you didn't, you'll get a second chance to. Or if it's installed in an awkward location, then you can browse for it. That's okay. So you also have the network settings from the previous page. So again, we have the modem at 1.1, the WAP at 3.2, the CP LAN at 0.1, and the CP WAN with DHCP. So we don't know this IP yet. Again, this comes from the modem. Okay, so one thing I'd like to point out too is you can skip certain tests. And so if you're testing your network and you're pretty sure that something's going to change or is temporary or you'll add later, you can skip it. Another use for this is if it's undiscoverable. For example, if your modem will not accept ping requests, then it'll think that you don't have a modem when you actually do. So let's check the requirements. Okay, so for me, everything passed except the WAP, the wireless access point. And the reason for this is earlier when I was showing you how to find your LAN and WAN, I actually pulled out my network adapter and didn't put it back in. So if I put it back in now, wait for it to come up. Let's test it one more time. Great. Now everything passed. So from here we move on to the config tab. So I've already done this before, so this says to go number 2, but for new users it'll say number 1, click the setup plugin button. And so you can see the tooltip says installs the captive portal plugin. And so we have the plugin, but now we need to install it. So click setup plugin. You get an icon here saying extracting. It says this will extract the plugin, taking up 300 megs of space. And if you've already done this before, all settings will be reset by continuing. And so if you ever mess up something, this is also a good way to start over. Continue? Yes. Okay, so it doesn't take too long. After you're done, it'll ask us to choose a WAN and a LAN. And so if I start with a LAN, if we look back at view adapters, we open this back up. I'm using Windows 10 right now, so for this example, it keeps renaming my WAN to Wi-Fi, but that's okay, as long as I remember it. Okay, so my LAN is named LAN, and you can see the description says A6AX something something. So I'm going to go back here, and I've already clicked on LAN. Now if I look in the list over here, I'm looking for that A6 device. Here it is, A6. And it says here USB to fast Ethernet. You could ignore that. Again, I'm on my laptop, so you need physical devices. Normally you cannot use the USB. And as soon as you click on the correct device, you'll see it lights up, which means you have it selected. So we need to go WAN now. We're going to the other one. I'm looking for Intel Dual Band Wireless. Let's go back. Intel Dual Band Wireless. Okay. So I have my LAN, I have my WAN. Just to confirm, you can hover over it. The tooltip will show you. We have RAM size now. You could either do 256 or 512. 256 is actually enough for most cafes, but if you have way more than enough to spare, then go ahead and do 512. It'll make it perform way better. So I'm going to choose 256, the default, and click Submit. You can see it says OK, number 1 pass, number 2 pass, Start tab ready. Let's move on to the Start tab. Okay, we've arrived at the Start tab. You can see there's 2 different sections for Captive Portal and Virtual Hotspot. Virtual Hotspot is currently a work in progress. What this will do is if you have a Wi-Fi stick, then it'll broadcast an SSID, and eventually you'll be able to integrate it with Captive Portal, and you don't even need a Wi-Fi access point with this. But currently it'll broadcast SSID, but there's not too much you could do with. Overall, for now, I would skip this as of March 26th. But we'll get this feature out really soon. But this is the main part that we want to deal with, Captive Portal. So if you check this box, it'll launch. Launch plugin. It launches it in the background. Wow, that did it really fast. So the average it takes is about 30 seconds. So that happened really fast. I just want to tell you what happened. So when it was launching the plugin, it was running the plugin in the background using the amount of RAM you mentioned earlier. And awaiting handshake. What this does is it's trying to SSH into your Captive Portal. So it's trying to connect to it. And once it's connected, then everything will be checked. And it means that your Captive Portal is 100% up and running. And what happened after it was done the first time, it shot us into the logs really quickly. This is because the first thing we want to do is change our password, because it was a default password, and with this, any amateur could get in and completely control your Captive Portal by just watching this tutorial to know the default password, which is admin, A-D-M-I-N. So I'm actually just going to change this to admin 2. And you could ignore what's in here for now. I'll go through this later. So, changing your passwords actually changes 3 passwords in the background. It's sort of a special process. And so it takes just a little bit to change the password. It takes up to 30 seconds. You can see it's flashing. It's going from green to orange. Let's just wait a moment. And I did say there is 3 passwords to change, so you see it flash 3 times. So it's on the last one right now. Okay, password change complete. So we've done a lot of stuff, and what I want to do is click apply. And really we should be clicking apply throughout the tutorial. Because it would be really bad to lose all these settings. Many of the major settings you do, it automatically applies for you, and so if something happens, then you probably won't lose too much. Okay, so let's go back to the Start tab, because that skipped really quickly. Okay, so check. C portal running at 192.168.3.1. Let's actually check it out. Instead of going to Chrome or a browser to 192.168.3.1, I'm just going to hit the Advanced button. It says Launch as Admin Web GUI, Advanced Users Only. Warning, Advanced Network Operators Only. Are you sure you want to proceed? Yes. And this will launch your default browser, and you can see the Admin Web GUI login window. So the default is admin, but because we changed our password, it's now admin2. From here, you can see the dashboard. Normally, when a user is logged in, you could see the users inside here. You can see that WAN is operational. You can see the DHCP IP that was applied. LAN is fine. When users are assigned an IP address, it'll say it's from server.smartlaunch.com. You can see this is running off pfSense. You can see how long it's been up. The DNS servers used. By default, we use the public Google server, so you won't have to change anything in most cases. And you could also see the memory used. You could see 52% out of 234 megabytes. And each time a client is connected, it takes up maybe 0.75 megabyte. So you can probably connect about 75 clients with just 250 megabytes of RAM. And you have a maximum of 1.5 gig of drive space, but usually won't take up that much unless you've been running it for years and years. Then maybe it'll take up a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to exit out of here, and we'll come back to this a bit later. So I wanted to show you the status screenshot. You can see if you hover over it, it displays a recent screenshot, and all screenshots are saved. And if you click on this, it'll launch a screenshot of the Captive Portal running in the background, which just looks like a black and white command prompt. And you can view all your screenshots in this folder. And in case you missed that, I just pressed on this little icon here, View All Saved Screenshots. And so if I move on to the Logs tab, when you look at the status screenshot, this is the same thing almost as the status screen here. So I said I would come back to the logs here. Let's take a look. Anything that says SL is actually from the Smartlaunch server. And if it doesn't say SL, then it's actually from the Captive Portal through SSH. So you can see at the beginning, the Captive Portal was detected, initialized, and launched 25 to 90 seconds. It took a status check. And then it tells you how long it took for the plugin to start. And for me, it was already running. That's why it started so fast. And the first thing it does when you're connected is it checks the status. And so this is a lot. Let me clear it by clicking here. Clear log looks like a little broom. Then click on status. Checking status. You can see it turns orange. Status check complete. So let's take a little look at this. It says last login. It'll say when and from where. So if you don't recognize this IP address, then you should definitely change your password by this button earlier that we looked at. And so if we see this version number here, you'll notice there's actually two versions. 2.1.5 release SL. This is the pfSense version, which means this is the software that's running behind the Captive Portal. And this version will never change. So be sure you never update pfSense itself. You only want to pay attention to the version below. Smartlaunch Captive Portal version 1. And so eventually we'll add a way to automatically update the new versions. And if you look below, you see your two addresses for WAN and LAN. And M0 and M1, this is just a relationship to VirtualBox, what was used earlier. So this means M0 is the first network, M1 is the second network. And here is the network card you defined earlier. And here is the related IP address. So if you see WAN, we noticed DHCP. So earlier I said that it'll take the DHCP IP from the modem. So ended up being 192.168.1.184. So this was automatically assigned. And you can see it's on the same subnet as your router at .1.1. And so if you're wondering what the /24 means, this just means subnet mask is 255.255.255.0. And you've probably seen this number before if you've ever set up a static IP address. When asked for the subnet, this is usually what you put. So status check complete. Let's click apply, because we've done a lot so far. Okay, so pretty much once you see the successful status screen, this means your captive portal is up and running. So from here, let's say you just need some additional help. We have integrated help on this tab. You'll see the same video here, just integrated into Smartlaunch, and you can even fast forward to different sections. You can click here for the KB. One thing I wanted to talk about is troubleshooting. So if you go back to the Requirements tab, you'll notice there was a button that I skipped, Diagnostics. If you click the Diagnostics button, you'll see that there's tons of fixes to common errors. And not just errors, but just tasks, if there's something that you want to do to test the captive portal. Anything from resetting it to disconnecting certain parts. And if you keep everything checked, which is default, and you click Run Diagnostics, this will reset all your settings to default. I'm going to close this window. Now if you go back to the Networks tab, you'll notice that there's other things we can do now that the captive portal is up and running. So we can now customize our CP LAN and CP WAN. For example, I wanted the CP LAN on the same subnet as my WAP. And this is one of the requirements. So as long as it says 192.168.3. something, and this says 192.168.3. something. So these are on the same subnet. You can also even customize the DHCP server range. And so you could see the defaults are grayed out. And you don't have to type it, because if you don't put anything here, it'll use the default. For instance, 192.168.0.100 to 192.168.0.200 is the default. But because we changed it, we're customizing it. We want to change this to the .3 subnet to match. So 192.168.3.100 to 192.168.3.200. And so what does this mean that the DHCP server is on and the range? This just means that whenever a client logs in or is connected to the captive portal Wi-Fi, they'll be assigned an IP address from this range, in this case from .3.100 to .3.200. And this starts from the top and continues one by one. So the first client would be .3.101, second .3.102, and so on. And so after I change this, I want to click Save and Apply. And you'll see a window briefly flash and fade away. And this takes about 10 seconds. If you look at the status symbol, you'll see it's orange, and once it's green, then you can continue. Okay, network saved. And if you look down here, you can even see the IP address that was assigned from DHCP. So after doing this, I want to click Apply. Anytime you see these status symbols, this is just referring to the captive portal SSH. You can see that red is offline, orange is busy, and green is online or idle. So anytime there's activity from the captive portal side, you'll actually see it in the logs. You can see the icon change to a new icon, which means there's new items in the log. So if we return here, it says status check complete, save SSH key, and then it saved a special text file on the captive portal. This just shows where your server is so that we can access it from the login screen. Now, there are some other settings I wanted to discuss, such as the REST settings. We'll save the changes. So if you go to captive portal, there's a chance that it'll prompt you to go to the REST settings screen. So if it's not on already, you'll be prompted to do so, and you can actually go directly here from the icon. So we need RESTful service enabled, and we need use 8080 for captive portal. And at the moment, this is a requirement. However, we plan to remove this in the future. So let's just click Apply. And if you didn't have the RESTful service on before, or if you just changed it to port 8080, it'll ask you to reset the Smartlaunch server. So after you reset, the last thing that we need to do is to set up a Wi-Fi device. So if we go to Client Computers, grouping/consoles, you'll see I made some Wi-Fi devices already on computers 1 through 3. And this is just a console type. So to show you how to do it, let's say we have a laptop here. I want to change this to captive portal Wi-Fi device. So I click here, set console type, and just like how you set the laptop, you can see Wi-Fi device at the bottom. Now if I were to go to the Smartlaunch administrator, you could see that the icons for the Wi-Fi devices change as well. If I double click, this is what you would see. And when a user actually logs in the captive portal, it'll show them down here, user has logged in through a RESTful service. And that's that setting we set a while back for port 8080. At the moment, one captive portal Wi-Fi user can connect to one Wi-Fi device. If you're curious to see what the captive portal would actually look like when a Wi-Fi client logs in, you can go back to the captive portal through networking, captive portal, and you can just wait a moment for everything to go green. Okay, now we go back to advanced. Yes. And you see we're brought back to the advanced dashboard. But if we just go back to the top and you type :8000, so the same site, just port 8000, then this is what users would see. So you have the username, password, and optional ticket voucher. At the moment the vouchers are disabled, but we will be sure to add them in the future. At the top we also have a generic terms of service. In the future they will be customizable. After a user is logged in, the user will be displayed with a logout page which he can disconnect from. When a user logs in through the captive portal, they are logged in through Smartlaunch, and they can be administered through admin. I hope you found this setup tutorial informative. If you need further assistance, you can start by the Help tab, where it has the video tutorial, or you can go to the KB button, which leads directly to the knowledge base. Soon I'll be adding a new video for a quick start guide and troubleshooting, so be sure to look out for them. Also look into our video description at the top under the video, which will have some informative links for you. Thanks for watching.